New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, hello. Now I'm here, full voice and all. Welcome to Rockin the Love. I am Robyn Olmstead, and I am going to have a co-host today, as my husband, Gil Olmstead, is feeling under the weather. He had a procedure this week, and sending him lots of love. He's doing great, just in some pain today. So I have invited my friend and who will be the co-host today, John Chastain. Welcome, John.
Hey, hi.
Hi. So good to have you. Good to have you. Well, John is a longtime listener, so I know you know the drill. I know you know what we talk about and how we do it. So, how's your week been?
My week has been inspiring. And I'm working with some Joe Dispenza material, a book called Becoming Supernatural. And I'm taking Michael Beckwith's class, Awaken and Activate, online at Agape. And I was just watching him and getting all these nuggets. And I said, you know, the class I think was affordable. It was $300. But I said, do yourself a favor and take the videos that they're sending in the class and just get those nuggets. And so I've been... instead of chicken McNuggets,
you are a little
Michael
chicken
nuggets. so and it's so freeing to study spiritual principle and to be watching shows like this and looking at observing. It's been a lot of observing this week. What am I doing? And mentating. I'm looking at, when am I just kind of mentating and having the same thoughts? That's been a real big thing. And we have tomorrow's Halloween. We have Day of the Dead. And I think we're talking about a little bit of that today. And I'm excited to be here. Sending Gil lots of healing, loving energy.
Yes. Thank you. He needs it, and we appreciate it. So welcome to anyone out there who's joining us. Gil is not with us today, and this is my co-host, John Chastain. My week has been good. I mean, Gil had a procedure on Monday, and you know, he's been a little up and down, but good nonetheless. For me, I know you don't care, much like my husband doesn't either, but it's a big sports week for me with the World Series, and I'm
that's exciting.
Happy. Yeah,
that's exciting.
It is very exciting. And yeah, I mean, it's been a good week. You know, some teenage drama, but I don't know life without it now, so it's just kind of normal. And I'm excited to be going to visit people in Oakland tomorrow, and going on a trip, and that's it. It's a good week. So that in and of itself is good news, right?
That sounds good. Yeah, and I believe I'll be one of the people seeing you, and I'm excited to, you know, join in consciousness and in our body temples and have a good time.
Sounds very sexy, John.
I think so. And let me quote Lynn Carr Sykes, one of our beloveds that has passed over, because she always used to say, let's have a funky good time.
That's right.
And she brought that spirit. And so, Lynn, you're right here with us.
Whether you like it or not, Lynn. So, all right. So it's time for some good news. I don't know if you have it. Do you have any good news? Did you
Yeah,
find-
I do. I do. I was listening to Michael, and he was telling the story. I'm working on forgiveness, and this is an older one, but I want to tell it anyway. And there was a guard that was abusive in a couple of situations to Nelson Mandela when he was imprisoned. And I'm not sure, you guys might have even mentioned this, but in the forgiveness work that happened, he seated that guard next to him at a state dinner. And I just thought, wow, it's such a high example of unconditional love and forgiveness. And, I wish I could hear what the guard had to say about that experience. I'm sure it was just profoundly moving. And I think he was unfortunately doing his job, but that compassion and that forgiveness, and I mean, that is good news that a high, amazing person like Nelson Mandela could just embrace that. That's beautiful. So
It's very exemplary for us all.
yeah.
And I remember hearing Michael Beckwith tell the story, and with the words that were said between the two, like the guard asked him why, and he told him why. I don't remember the exact words, but I mean, I think that it's so powerful, really, to let go of anything you're harboring and know that it's not the truth, that we're all more than this. So that's beautiful. Thanks, John. Well, I was going to tell a story.
Yes.
I was going to tell a story about the largest pumpkin. So that they found in Belgium, and it weighed 2,020. It weighed over 2,700 pounds, and it was weighed as much. Yeah, it weighed as much as the guy's Honda Civic.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah,
that's what it says. Oh my God.
But I'm not telling that story because I couldn't figure out what was so good about it. I mean, I think it's amazing that he grew a 2,700 pound pumpkin, but I was like, that's not that great news. I mean, I think it's great that people are following their passion. But I'm going to tell another story, and to keep my producer on his toes, I'm not going to tell the one that I had. I'm going to tell a different one.
Okay.
I know. He likes this. It's like acrobatics. I'm going to tell the reason I'm not going to tell the other story is because I'm going to save that one for when Gil's here, because it's kind of a Gil story. Okay. But I'm going to talk about on October 12th, there was a Southwest pilot who went on a mission to transporting animals out of the hurricane shelters and out of the path of Hurricane Helene and Milton. And the Southwest was partnering with a charity to animal rescue and all that. And as he was doing that, he one of the animals apparently couldn't wait, a kitten named Avery, who got out somehow and came up in his lap, and he ended up adopting her. So I thought that was super sweet. I like the animal stories, but I thought that was super sweet. Just that, I mean, I think bravo to Southwest for, being conscious and supporting causes. And then bravo to Captain Matt for falling in love at 30,000 feet and taking her home with him. So
you got to watch it around those little furry ones.
I know. Right?
Well, we both know because we're animal lovers and adopters. Yeah,
I know. We have a rescue dog. We have a rescue dog, and we're thinking about going to see another one. We're supposed to go today, but doesn't feel like he's going to be up to it. So we'll see.
There we go. There we go. We got an image there.
There we go. That's my producer. Look at that. Yep.
Yeah,
Isn't that cute?
Our wonderful Reverend Michael Mangus. Yeah.
Yep. So that's our good news for the week. When we come back, we're going to do some focusing on, as John alluded to, about just Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, and all of those things that happen right now, and honoring the people that have passed on in our life. And the title of our show is Gone But Not Forgotten, because all of those people still play a part in all of our relationships, or some of our relationships, or something like that. So we're going to do some exploration on that. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back here and have a funky good time. So join us on New Thought Media Network.
Yes.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we are back. This is Rockin the Love. I am Robyn Rice Olmstead, and my co-host today is
John Chastain. Hello, everybody. Hello, Robyn.
So we are back and ready to talk about this season, this fall season, and what happens in that and what it all means. And so we have Halloween, we have Day of the Dead, we have All Saints Day. Am I missing anything?
I'm glad you mentioned All Saints Day. I wouldn't have thought to mention that one, but it's pretty significant. And no, I don't think. I'm trying to think. No, I think those are the big ones.
So all of those seem to relate somehow to spirits, and it's at a time of spooky, like I mean, if you look at the movies, we've got skeletons dancing and things like that. And All Saints Day is technically a day about honoring the saints that went as they passed on, I believe. And yeah, and also, I mean, I've heard all different things, of course, of like, that's the time when the veil is thinner and people tend to cross over and things like that. Yeah, do you celebrate any of those days?
I do. I've actually celebrated all three, and it's interesting because you and I were talking on the phone last night, and you brought up something that I had forgotten, that we were in the driveway here of my parents' home and handing out candy and having a fire pit going, I believe, and it was a wonderful memory. And it's just it's a rich time culturally. Halloween is huge as a cultural event. A lot of people spend a lot of money, and I don't think it's just a you know get things. I think it's a really interesting time spiritually.
Yeah. And there's also the change of the seasons that happens in there,
Hmm.
and I mean, I think it's very, I don't know, to me, I mean, fall's my favorite season. So it becomes very mystical in a way, like the time changes and it's dark earlier and light, everything shifts.
Yes. And I had a landscaping gardening business. And what's interesting at this time of year when we have all this spiritual, and it's a time when we celebrate and honor and look at people who've crossed over. And the same thing is happening in nature right now. Yes, it's harvest time, but I don't know how many people know when you go to get the pumpkins, let's say pumpkins for Halloween, basically the vines are almost dead. And so you get the fruit, yes, but then the leaves are falling off the trees and flowers are starting to really wither this time of year and go into dormancy and go within and do their own crossing over because they look they're and just like spirit, there's a spiritual experience happening, but we can't see it.
Right.
And with the plants, it's so interesting because what everything does in the fall is it goes into the ground, and the root systems are vital. And this is a time in all the root systems when a lot of nourishment and growth and everything is happening for the next year for it to bloom.
Well,
You
it's
know,
interesting that you say that because I was actually debating about making that my good news. I was reading about an organization called the Leaves, Leave the Leaves. And what they're telling everyone is don't rake up your leaves, and if you need to move them because they're in the way of something, rake them over, put them over, because this is we disrupt the ecosystem, and this is where the moths go to hibernate for their time, or the other insects get nutrients and things like that. So yeah, it's interesting that you say that because that is very mystical to me in a way that I'm just hearing this now. Like this has been going on for centuries, right? People picking up their leaves, and like I don't know how many people really know that they're disrupting the ecosystem. They think they're cleaning their yard.
right, right. And you make an excellent point, and it is just it's also it's a source of home for little mice and
Yeah.
little woodland creatures that go up the food chain, and we see the beautiful eagles soaring in the sky, but they also that is their source of food. And
I
I
know
think
it's that
that
the circle of life. I hate that. I'm not a
yeah,
fan. I hate it. I hate it.
I'm not real hot on when they do the nature shows and they show the like it's like, okay, don't show that part where they get the yeah. Oh, somebody said I wish you would have told me that earlier. I just spent 2 hours raking leaves. Well, and in the raking leaves, I have a tree that drops it's going to drop from now until it's bare in January. And I can rake and rake and rake. And then at a certain point, I can leave a few. So you can always rake a majority and
Yeah.
leave a little smattering here and there.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but it's yeah, and I've been reading. Reverend Joan at Agape in Bay Area has been teaching us a meditation class and reading Breath by Rosenberg, and he talks about impermanence. And I also am listening to some Buddhist tapes from Paramahansa Yogananda, and in our physical body, when we expire, it is impermanent. And the Buddhists even dwell on the impermanence of the body. And in days gone by, the monks would literally go to places where the bodies would decay. And it was to see it, and it was to impact on them. This temple, this thing goes.
Right.
And then at the same time, we get to, at this time of year, we dwell on that maybe, but we also dwell on there's a spirit. The spirit is eternal. And that's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like, wow. Oh,
And so that's what we're talking about today. So many people have passed on, so many people that were important to us in our relationships. You know, you are lucky enough to still have a parent. Both of my parents are gone. You know, not to mention countless others. Someone called me today with somebody that we went to high school, making a transition. And I'll say too, last night when I was watching the World Series, it was interesting. I was watching with Robert, our 15-year-old, and they did a piece where everyone in the stadium and all the ball players and everything held up their signs, and the umpires of the people they were honoring that had cancer. And it was very powerful, very silent, and everybody holding up names and things. And Robert was like, wow, that's a lot of people with cancer. How many people get cancer? How many this, how many that? Because he hasn't had that experience, right? And that we all know someone that has had something to do with cancer. You know, so it was interesting to witness that perspective of life. You know, some survivors, some not. But so as people pass on, what is the imprint that they leave in our life? And how does it linger with us? Like, so I think the question I would ask you, John, is like, who would you say of those that have passed on? And it doesn't even have to be family, but I probably will be. Um, who would you say is like has been the most influential in your life?
well, right away, my mother, who
Mm.
passed in 2023, and it's just so much love. Um, love, unconditional love is healing energy to me. I believe that, and I came across that with David Hawkins, who wrote Power of the Force. And I encountered that. I was just talking to Reverend Joan because I'm getting relicensed as an Agape spiritual practitioner. And we were talking about sitting with someone, and when you go to do a spiritual counseling, and being that unconditional love for them. And it's interesting because I went to the Oakland Gay Men's course last night, which I'm a member of, and somebody came up and hugged me really hard. And I said, I feel like there's something behind that. And they said, yes, there is. I really needed a hug from you because I just found out I have bladder cancer. And so during the break, I was able to bring that love there and pray for them. And afterwards, because we had to go back to singing, they said, I felt that in every cell of my body. I felt the love. And I bring up my mother because we're all practicing things. We're always all practicing something. And my mother practiced so much love for her two children, for me and my brother. And I just realized as I aged, as I moved out of her house, as I went to work, as I did all these things, that was really that there there are a lot of people who are not practicing unconditional love or giving it at that moment, and that this woman chose that repeatedly, and she talked about it, and she told it. My mother would tell me, "I want you to know that you are loved." It, see, good.
Yeah.
and and it's huge, and there are people practicing it too, and it's essential because that was a teaching, that was a spiritual teaching that my mother anchored in me. And I can look at her photos, I can look at photos with her, and just feel that, and it's interesting because we've been really great friends for so long, Robyn, and I've asked you so much about your mother because when somebody's in my heart like you are, I want to know their family tree. And there's something about the mothers, that is just amazing. And so I've asked you a lot of stories, and I just remember, when you told me about traveling with her. You would go to Mexico,
Hmm.
and what was her energy like? And I would imagine when I'm talking to you, you can sense her and feel her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
For me, my mother, yes, was definitely instrumental. I'm not sure that she's the person um, that I hear in my head all the time, and that could be because it was a very long time ago when she passed away, and I was 17 years old. And I mean, I know I'm very much like my mother, and I know I also have traits like my father. And but I think for me, one of the elders that I would call on, I think, is my grandfather, and he was the one who taught more of like this consistency. He worked in public relations, and so he was in the entertainment business, and I mean, he would write a thank you note for everything, literally, like not only in business, but like we'd go to dinner at his house and we'd get a thank you note, and like just that awareness and that consciousness of gratitude and being grateful and sharing that acknowledgement with people, I think is something that really lives with me in relationships. And I mean, I find that people say that in with me because they're like, wow, you do a lot, and they're those little things that I think we're not always conscious of. Sometimes it's not something you learn to do or whatever. It's just an awareness that doing a little bit extra could make a difference. So my grandfather was a big influence, I think, on me.
I have a book from you, and it's a I Love Lucy book, and it's one of those little teeny bitty ones. And you and I have been BFFing for a while, and you just wrote these little anecdotes and post-its and different things, and it's such a treasure. And it's the little gestures of love. What did Mother Teresa say? Do small things with great love, or something beautiful like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's just is that love present, and in the way, when you moved and we had to kind of go through a lot of stuff. All of us have a lot of stuff usually, and unfortunately in our busy lives we don't get much of a chance to unpack it, and we unpacked some things that we had to decide what to keep, what to release. And we came across some stuff from your grandfather, and I remember some of the correspondence and notes we were able to look at fairly quickly. But yeah, I got it. You got a sense, and it was, this man has passed on, and yet here is a written letter or thank you or clipping, and yeah, and I see the embodiment, and so I'm not surprised that he's there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, those are the good things. We're talking about the good things. What about the other things? Do you pick up patterns or things that your parents were holding on to, or people, people that have gone, that you take into a relationship?
Oh, sure. That's that's another easy. Yes. Um, my mother did too much for everybody, um, and didn't have real good boundaries. In healthy relationships, there's a sense of self and really loving and honoring yourself. And it kind of goes back to that, do you put your oxygen mask on first so you don't pass out on the floor and die in the airplane? You can help other people. Well, my mother, God bless her, she taught me just keep giving. And when the oxygen mask is waving around in front of you, whatever, you have people to help right up and down the aisles until you pass out.
Right.
And so, um, this work that I'm doing, especially I have a relationship and I'm just like, oh no, mi amor. He's Spanish and Colombian, and let me help you, and I'm about to pass out on the floor, but that's okay. And and so yes, if you, I grew up with this woman and I watched her give abundantly, but I didn't have the discernment to go, this might not be real healthy. And and at the same time, I fully believe that is my spiritual path to walk, and those are my spiritual lessons to learn. And so I'm like, okay, then go be with somebody like Michael Beckwith and go do some group work and pray. And because I was reading Melody Beattie, wonderful, she does codependent stuff. And she was saying in her healing journey, she said, you may not get I think she also had some alcoholism and drug addiction. And so she talked about needing some really good clinics and stuff. And she said, I prayed for my healings to come. And it wasn't always necessarily the wonderful Betty Ford lush recovery center that was plush and expensive. She said, but it always came. And I believe that on our journeys as well. And I believe that I can call on my mother's energy and say, Mom, you're up there now, you're evolved, send me some energy to undo and release. And I want to say, I really want to emphasize, Michael Beckwith has just really said, do forgiveness work daily. And I think it's essential in our healing journey. That's been so helpful for me. And yeah, I think there are also ancestral patterns that I'm not aware of that have come down from my grandparents on both sides, good and quote bad. And as I do that walk and that healing, then I can say, hey, somebody else may have had the parents and this is what they inherited, good and bad, and that's where they're at. And give them,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
there's 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 really no good and bad. I mean, it's all an opportunity to see and acknowledge and break patterns, right? John, I just want to say, I don't know how you're moving, but there's some place where you move where the sound goes down. Isn't that
Oh,
true, Michael? Yeah. So if you can, yeah, if you look at Michael down there in the box, he'll give you like a thumbs up when you're in a good place, so because you go in and out. So I don't know if you're moving,
okay.
but like when you're sitting up like that, it's louder. So
Okay, so this okay.
um, yeah, but so I think I mean I think it's so interesting because I mean I think every generation has the opportunity to obviously learn from the past, and yeah, it's not always pretty. I mean, there are habits that need to be broken. I think also, we have this incredible influx of information, right? That we can get our hands on. I mean, where we can hop on the internet and we can go to Joe Dispenza or Michael Beckwith or Thich Nhat Hanh or whomever. We can find this stuff and have three perspectives in 10 minutes, whereas, generations before either had to go to the library or have an Encyclopedia Britannica, and they couldn't, and there wasn't this, we couldn't Zoom call, and they weren't hearing things like we have so many channels of information, so I think it's interesting, like you said, doing this work and doing forgiveness work as well, and really being able to take the information in a healthy way, and then, put it into creating a healthy pattern, a new pattern to be presented, to be lived, to be, laid down for future generations.
Yeah. So that when somebody recalls me and my journey or my energy, hopefully it'll be like, he really rose to the challenge. And also that acceptance, I think forgiveness and acceptance, I just want to say that accepting right where I'm at is where I need to be, and that I believe we incarnate, and this goes to the spirit. Where do we incarnate? We're disembodied, we're energy. I believe we come down for more than one life. We incarnate, we are born, we appear in where we're supposed to be. And it's such a rich time if you're looking at the saints. I did the All Saints. Sorry, I'm gonna have to move around a little. My cat is insisting that I feed her, so she's gonna start howling in a minute. These are historical periods, and we can stretch that.
No, we can't. You got to stay where we can hear you, though.
Okay, is this good?
It's fine.
And looking at those times, I like to study Jesus a lot, and the New Testament and the teachings. And what was really revealing for me, and goes with this, because definitely saints, and then all the apostles. It's just saints galore. It's like the saints parade. And looking at that in a historical context and what was going on at the time. And this is a new thought presentation. Where was the consciousness at? And in Day of the Dead, and looking at through the lens of, if somebody was alive 100 years ago, like my grandmother, and what was the consciousness of the time? And she was a woman, and what was the consciousness around women? And having compassion and understanding, because it's easy, and I've done this, it's easy for me to go, oh, well, she's a woman and she put up with that, or and judge, as opposed to realize that people's consciousnesses were different. And a lot of people put out a lot of things that, unfortunately, people at the time thought they had to kind of subscribe to or embody or really struggle with.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, I agree with you on the one level. And on the other level, we think we're so advanced with all the things that I just said. And on the other level, when you talk about people that lived 100 years ago, they were still celebrating and honoring Day of the Dead and All Saints Day, and feeling, on some level, they were feeling into that connection with the spirit in a different way, right? So, there was that awareness and connection, which is seemingly, could feel advanced, so to speak, as opposed to not, right?
Yes.
So it's interesting. It's interesting the way the balance, and it makes me think about, like, that everything comes back around. So we're in this place where we're reclaiming that connection in some ways to the oneness. that, they may not have had all the same technical tools, but I mean, on some level, they may have been more grounded in spirit.
What comes up for me is the simplicity of these holidays. When you go to Halloween, if you get into, and we still get trick-or-treaters, and it was to go out into the darkness and go door to door. And I remember when I was small, and as you went from house to house, there was a lot less light. They just didn't have the lighting. Nobody had the lighting like they do now, like all over the garden in the front, and
Right.
so it was dark.
Right.
And we had to be careful crossing the streets. And I remember the adults, they were a lot more vigilant because it was a lot easier to like mow down a couple kids in Halloween outfits, especially where we live, and so it was that rich, the smells that the leaves were starting to mold and the flowers were starting to rot, and to me that's a sweet almost smell. The biomass, when it decays, there's kind of a sweetness. It's not like animal waste, and that pungency and that crispness and that this sensation that just come over you, and then the sounds, and then people would have like the Disney. Remember that Disney haunted record? Did you ever hear that haunted house record?
Yeah.
Like it seemed like everybody had that, and people would play that, and yet it was so effective, and then people would come up with things like the door would be on a rope, and you go to, and somebody be looking out somewhere, and you were a kid, so you didn't, and so the door would open, and then there would be this bowl of candy, and the kids were like, "Do we run, or do we get the candy?" And our mentalities were like, "No, it's these are humans," and no, and then you go to reach for the candy, and then it would get pulled away or something, and you'd be like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
It was so engaging, and it's also in kind of Jungian terms, I think. It's the darker side of it, the shadow side, and people think, oh, that's the where all the horrible things are stored, and it's like, no, it's just things that are not brought to consciousness. And when we cross over, it's so mysterious, because I don't get emails from my mom. And some people have pierced, and like you said, piercing the veil. What is that? Piercing the veil?
Yeah, it's good questions. And I've been told, obviously, that the more you acknowledge it, or the more you talk to your people that have gone beyond, then the more willing they are to show up, or the more often they'll show up, or the more the signs will show up, And so, yeah, it's like embracing that, and I think I'm gonna switch topics a little, but I'm gonna transition like this. That I think what's beautiful about what you've said is that, and we have the choice. We have the choice, to forgive when we hear the things we didn't like coming out of us, that we've heard from our mother, our father, our siblings, whatever. We have that choice, and I think we have the choice also to celebrate our loved ones. When I know, when I hear myself say something that my mom said, or that I thought I would never say, but there comes my dad out of my mouth, or my grandmother, and just to take that moment and acknowledge them. And so I'm switching subjects because I'm talking about choice. And I think what's super important to talk about right now is choice, because we're coming up on a big choice point this week. And so I think it's really important for everyone to just, you have the opportunity to make a choice. I loved on my other show, Girls Behaving Metaphysically, we were talking, and my co-host Natasha said, in Australia, you have to vote. It's illegal not to vote, right? I mean, what a
I
concept. What
wow,
a
that's
concept.
amazing. Yeah, yes, it is. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I get that that sort of limits choice on one level, but on the other level, there's so many privileges and things we get from the government and from life itself. I think that that's why not? That's my perspective. If you feel
And would
differently out there, tell us.
yes, please do. Please, any comments on anything that we were discussing? Or the interesting thing to me, Robin, is when I read the numbers of people who voted, and I just it baffles me. I'm like, all you people who didn't, because it's usually this huge number of people that do not vote, and I'm like, do you people realize that you could have created a whole different outcome? Because the numbers are, and I just feel like and then I hear people who say they don't vote. I don't know too many of those people um, that I know of, but the ones that I do encounter, and they say that, and they say, "Well, it's no use in voting because And I think, well, actually, if you look at the numbers, it is because the amount of people that stay home could kind of have their way, but there's a voter apathy. And I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm choosing to have my energy on a very positive outcome. I believe it would be wonderful to see a woman in the White House. I think it's high time. And I know that Spirit has got this. And also just releasing, I heard some people outside of the Y that I go to making plans to be in another country if it goes a certain way. And the woman said, "Yeah, my kids can live in the basement." I thought, well, there's a pip of idea. And she was older than me, and I thought, yeah, your grown kids are not going to go whatever you think, but who knows? But I said, living in fear, I when that comes up for me, I'm like, let me do my work on that. So, because I
Well,
spent too many years when I was younger living in fear.
that's a good point. I mean, I hear a lot of people living in fear, and I hear a lot of practitioners also who I can tell that they have um, held down the work to, make, anchor peace and love and do that. But I can hear that behind it, there's still a concern, and I think that the work we do is super important
Yes.
to be clear on what you're anchoring. And I know that, a lot of people are worried, a lot of people are concerned, and that's okay. If that's where you're at, that's where you're at, that's valid. And, but when you say things like, I know that God's got it. Like, do we really know?
Mm,
And I feel for me personally that I have moved to a different level of that on some level this time, because I really, I do know that. And I know, and I'm really haven't been nervous at all, except when I listen to other people, I start to think, wait, what? And then I hear it, I feel it get into my consciousness, but I haven't
mm-hmm,
been,
mm-hmm.
uh, I haven't been worried about it. And yes, I did have a day where I prayed, I get it. I get it. If there's, it goes either way. You've got it. If there's more for us to learn, great. I'm hoping there's not that much for us to learn left from those that have been there before. But, really being able to go, I'm okay. And I am okay. I am okay. And does that mean that things would change if another party got in? Yeah, things would change. And it would be a concern. But do I think that at the end of the day, we won't make it through? I have to believe that we will on some level, or would.
I'm with you, and I feel that. And I think you had said something about choice and choosing where we're at and choosing what we embody. And and I love what you said too. Do we know that God's got this? And as I said right now, I'm just really looking at principle and really doing the deep dive, and because it's so important for me if I'm going to be sitting with people to know, and I don't say this lightly, know that I know. I went to a wonderful gathering for Reverend Dr. Eloise Oliver, and she's a emeritus now, minister emeritus, and we honored her for all her years of service. She's almost 100, and I started with her with foundations at East Bay, and just to see the love, and that's where I heard that for the first time. Know that I know, and to
Senior Center.
go to the rock deeply, and folks, if those of you who are listening, I turn to Robyn a lot because she's my rock, and just I'm here, and what do you think of this, and what do you think of this, and these beautiful conversations that we have, and then that we have with our larger group of people. And I talked to Reverend Joan, and to anchor, and I feel like those of us who are practitioners and ministers, and those of us who are not, anyone can anchor love. Anyone can anchor knowing these principles and knowing that it's good to choose love, and it's great to do some work to release some fears and doubts and anxieties, and like I say in my treatments, to send them into the nothingness from whence they came. When I can realize, oh, those aren't God qualities, and they can become like the skeletons and the candy that's pulled away, and the fears that we create for fun on Halloween in our normal day-to-day, they can appear so like they're real.
Right.
What is that one, that Night of the Living Dead? They're coming to get you. They're coming to get you. Remember that? Did you see that movie? In the beginning, he's like, they're coming to get you, to his sister in the graveyard, and this zombie comes and it gets him and kills
Goes
it's real. So dispelling those illusions that seem so real, and breaking through, and there's the love.
Well, yes, I love that. And along those lines, my favorite one is that commercial that they've been playing for years, where the kids are out going, to the haunted house, and they're scared, and they're like, what are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And the one girl goes, can't we just get in the running car? And, and then they proceed into the danger, and even the zombie guy rolls his eyes, So that is our message for today. Get in the running car and know that God is driving, and do that in whatever ways you're looking at. Celebrate, have a great Halloween, and and when you get messages from your ancestors or people that have gone before in your life, just anchor them, send a little love, and if it's a bad pattern coming up that you're trying to get rid of, notice that and know that, as John said, you can send it into the nothingness from whence it came, and just know that it's there to be noticed, and it can be transmuted into love and power and energy and action. So, with all that said, take all that love and energy and action, and make sure you vote and send in your ballots and do whatever you need to do. Campaign for your candidate, whatever you need to do, talk to friends, and let's just get this planet making more conscious choices. And you know what else? You got to rock the love, because that's what it's all about. So thank you so much, John Chastain, for joining me today and stepping in for Gil. And thank you so much, Michael Menges, for your flexibility and sense of humor. And thank you so much, Robert Brzezinski, for having New Thought Media Network and allowing us all to play here. So that's it for this week. Rock the love, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.